Hello, I'm Fay.
And I'm Becki. In this podcast, we're going to be talking about maximising your potential as a leader and living your best life personally and professionally.
So join us on the M53 for our weekly chats, full of insights and inspiration, and of course, a cuppa and a butty.
Fay, it's called a brew.
Hello, welcome to this episode. Today, we're going to be talking about, we're going to be talking about strengths and our superpowers. And this comes about because strengths is something that I am interested in. It's something that I talk to my clients about. But then recently I have read a book called Leadership, the Multiplier Effect by Andy Cope, Dr. Andy Cope. And he's a doctor of positive psychology. And in his book, he dared to suggest that we are all superheroes trying to be human. And I read that phrase and I just thought, wow, we're all superheroes trying to be human? What a way of looking at stuff. But what that means is that actually we kind of dumb ourselves down a bit. And in this episode, we're going to explore why we might do that. Why we don't celebrate our strengths and our superpowers. Becki and I are going to be talking about our own superpowers, which feels a bit funny. But yeah, quite often when I start working with my clients, we look at strengths, and I'll say to them, tell me what are your strengths, and every time I do that, my clients always sort of look back at me as if I've gone crazy, or they're a bit embarrassed to actually say, I'm really good at this and I'm really good at that. And we have quite a conversation often about pulling out what their strengths actually are and how they use them. But also, I think it's really important to remember that we've all got strengths that perhaps we're not aware of, but other people see strengths in us. And so we're going to talk today about how you can identify your strengths and why that's important. Becki, what are your strengths?
I haven't got any. No, do you know what, Faye? I have the same reaction as well from my clients when it comes to talking about strengths. And up until not so long ago, I think I would have done the exact same thing. I think that we are conditioned as a society, within our culture, that we don't talk about the things that we're good at, because that's showing off and we don't show off. And I think that's wrong. I think that's really wrong. And so when it comes to strengths, I definitely think it's really important, as you said, to start celebrating those more and to be able to recognise them more. And so, yeah, my strengths. What are my strengths? I would say I'm quite a natural leader. It's something that seems to come quite naturally to me. I do obviously have to work at different aspects and different leadership skills, but on the whole, this idea of having people in my charge, I love it. I'm very, very practical. I'm good at seeing the big picture, thinking ahead. That is a definite strength of mine. Whether or not it was always a strength, I'm not so sure, but I think it definitely something that came about as a result of my previous role. So, working in that engineering environment, thinking ahead to, okay, this is the end. This is what we need to do. This is what we need to have completed for the end of the project. Okay, what are all the things that we need to do in order to be able to hit that? And what are those potential obstacles? What are the things that could come up that we can head off at the pass now, early on, before they become a problem? So I think that's a definite strength of mine, and it's something that I use or try to use now within my own business as well. Sort of thinking ahead and working backwards from there. And I know that actually a lot of people aren't able to do that. They're not able to see the end goal in that same way. So yeah, that's definitely a strength of mine. How about you?
Well, before I get to me, I was just thinking about that big picture and working it back. That definitely is a strength, Becki, isn't it? It's that full project management package. Actually, I was kind of thinking when you were talking about that, it's really good because for
Yeah.
me, I'm really good at seeing the big picture. I'm terrible at seeing the nitty gritty that fits into that big picture early on. It takes me a while to sort of work out how to filter it down to all those tasks that you need to do. So I'm really brilliant at seeing the big picture, how it all fits together, what the end result could be. But then I feel uncomfortable in that space of bringing it down to the smaller tasks that need doing. So if you've got all that whole rounded project management, that's brilliant. I think for me, I'm a calm person. I'm very calm in a crisis, quite often, and I'm very practical. I can see practicalities about things, which is it's interesting because I've done 3 house renovations. Not personally, I wasn't the builder, thank goodness. I don't think the houses wouldn't be standing if I was. Although I can do a mean coving, but I can put up coving. That's my skill. Um, but yeah, I've done 3 house renovations where my builder project managed it. I didn't really project manage it, but I remember having very, very practical conversations with my builder, who just used to look at me as if to say, "Oh my goodness, we could do this so much quicker if she'd just let me do X, Y, and Z." But I could really see the practicalities of how things would work out. Like the one that comes into my head is the back door on our old house. We'd had a side extension put on, and my builder said there wasn't room for the back door to open inwards, which a door would normally open into the house. And he suggested we had a door that opened outwards. And I was like, why would you do that? If when it's raining, the rain would go down the inside of the door. You shut the door and you've got rain dripping inside your house off the door. And his eyes would just roll because he'd just be able to get away with that somebody else's house, on somebody else's build. And for me, that was just like, how's that practical? You'd have to have a rag there or a towel to dry down your door every time it rained. And it's those little things that I do see that as being a bit of I don't know if it's a superpower, but it's definitely a strength because then I can see practically through that. But yeah, it's very funny because when we were talking before we started recording the podcast, I said to Becki, we might need to identify our own strengths. And Becki was coming up with hers, and I sat back and I said, I'll ask you what your strengths are, Becki. I said, but don't ask me because I haven't got any. But in actual fact, I do believe that I'm in the right job for me. Coaching is perfect for me. I do believe that I'm going to say I'm a natural coach. That doesn't mean that I haven't got more to learn. Always got more to learn. And I always want to hone my skills. But I do believe that I am a strength of mine is coaching. And whether that's because I have been in this space for many, many years, it might be, but it's a space that I enjoy and it's something I really enjoy doing. And I think that's so important when we're working with our strengths, we almost get to that state of flow where we are, it doesn't feel like work. Coaching never feels like work for me. It's so enjoyable to coach my clients. So yeah.
Coaching superpower for you there,
that would be
Fay.
lovely, wouldn't it?
Yeah. No, and you know what? I totally agree with you. When it comes to the coaching as well, it's it just feels nice. It's something that it's my favorite part of what I do. The actual the coaching. Yeah, I love it. I do love it. So when we're thinking about strengths, and we then translate those into the workplace, and why it's important that we recognize our own strengths and are then able to help others to recognize theirs. And what's come to mind for me here as I've been thinking about this is around the idea that your team feel like they're in a safe pair of hands. If they can see that you recognize that this is a strength of yours, and you've got them. In whatever this scenario is, you've got them because this is a strength of yours, and that you are quite comfortable in talking about that these are your strengths, and in helping them to see that it's okay to recognize our own strengths and to talk about our own strengths. And I always feel there is a big difference between, confidence and arrogance, and being able to say that we are good at something does not make us arrogant at all. And being able to have that level of confidence is actually really, really important.
It really is. I can't imagine working in an organisation where I was maybe asked to do things that didn't I want to say didn't play to my strengths, but played to the areas where I felt very uncomfortable. My weaker areas, weaknesses, if you like, and that would feel like a very toxic environment. I think, when I look back at the different managers, I've had lots and lots of different managers. I think I can safely say that my skills were developed to the point where at least I felt very comfortable, in doing the work that I was doing. And we all have to learn. So there's always going to be that learning ladder that we go on. But yeah, and you know what, if you've got a team and everybody's playing to their strengths, hopefully you would look to recruit for the areas, the gaps, where have we got gaps here? What do we need to do? But we haven't got the right person to do that role. So hopefully you would recruit with that in mind. Hopefully you'd look, we can go into personality here. We can look at who people are and what they bring to the team in terms of their personality and their behaviours, how they work. And then you would be looking to have an even balance for what you need to actually carry out the role. But I know that there are organisations that don't look at this, that don't think about this, and it is really important. And as individuals, if we're going for a new role or if we're putting ourselves forward for work, it's so important that we're able to say why. Why would somebody choose us for that work? What can we bring to it? How can we make things different? How can we, bring our superpowers to the party? So important that we do that.
Bringing the superpowers to the party.
I've got these visions of capes going on.
Yeah, I literally had the exact same image running through my head. All these people in their superhero costumes dancing around the glitter ball. Yeah, fantastic. I haven't actually read this book, Faye, and I might be putting you on the spot a bit here, but I'm wondering, does Andy Cope say anything in there about what would be different if instead we all just accepted our superhero status? Is that something that comes up?
Yeah, I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say yes, because yes, that's what he does talk about. He does talk about that, the whole, it's all about, that self-leadership, and looking at who we are before we look at how we lead. So he does talk about it, maybe not in those words, but yeah, it is about, what would be different is why we dumb ourselves down, really. And he does talk about that, but it's all about confidence. It's about all the societal stuff that goes on, about what we have actually become as humans, what we're expected to do, how the media influences us, and all of that. And I might be bringing other stuff in because I'll be honest, I read a book and I move on to the next book, and I take whatever I take from it. So I might be bringing in other stuff from other books or my own stuff here, but it is, at the end of the day, it is about our self-leadership, and it is about recognizing who we are and everything about us. We are people, we are souls that were born into this world, and we all have a lot to give, no matter who you are, what you do, where you are. We all have a purpose in life, and we all must, bring that out of us at some point. And unfortunately, I think for some people we have more opportunity to do that than other people do. And for some people, they do just go on that treadmill, that hamster wheel, if you like, of life. Get up in the morning, get the kids to school, get off to work, do the job, do it well so that you can leave on time. We've talked about this, haven't we, in a previous episode. Leave on time so that you can pick the kids up, get home, get their homework done, make sure they're doing their reading, get the tea cooked, eat the tea, watch, I don't know, whatever you want to watch on TV, go to bed, do it all the same the next day. And so what that doesn't do is doesn't allow you to actually think about you. Who are we? Who are we? What we bring into this world? What do we want to be? What's our purpose? Whether it be, to, I don't know, lead the way for world peace, or just be a fantastic parent. And I'm sorry, I've just said just be a fantastic parent. I don't mean just at all. To be a fantastic parent. Whatever your purpose is, what are you what are the strengths, what are the superpowers that you're bringing to your purpose, and how can you live your purpose? And it is through your superpowers.
So if people are finding this really uncomfortable, this idea of sitting there and spouting out their own strengths, what advice would you give them? What tips? Where could they go?
Well, I'm going to steal this from Rich Litvin, who is a coach. He's a co-author of The Prosperous Coach. And I sign up to his email list, and he emails, every week. And one of his questions that he asks his clients a lot is, what did you love to do when you were a child? When you were 6 years old, what did you love to do? And that can tell us a lot about who we are, because when we're children, certainly before the age of 7 and possibly younger, but we don't have these limitations that life gives us. We are storing them from when we're born. And Becki, you can go more into this with your transactional analysis. But we are storing these lessons that we're learning from our elders from the day we are born. But when we are young, when we're children, we live our lives with the joy, and we just go out there and we just do it. We don't think, oh, I mustn't do this, because yes, there are certain things. Mustn't cross the road because mommy told me not to, without looking both ways or whatever. But we live in our flow when we are children, certainly. And so the things that we do, the way that we play, certainly when we're on our own as children, can tell us a lot about who we are and what we do. So for me, I remember really well sitting in my bedroom, and I loved stationery when I was a little girl. W.H. Smith's was my mecca. It was where I wanted to be, and I could spend hours looking at the pens. But I also had this book that I turned into a class register, and I had the names of all the children in my class in exactly the same order that my teacher did. And I would sit there at my desk, because I had a lovely little desk in my bedroom, and I would take the register by calling their names. Obviously, I didn't have any children to teach, but I was the teacher. And I also remember having a blackboard. It was a beautiful blackboard. It wasn't very big, but it was bigger than most of the blackboards that kids of the early 80s were playing with. And it had the chalk stand at the bottom of it, so you could put your chalks on it. So my mum, being my mum, said, I don't want your blackboard in the house, Faye, because with the chalks, it makes too much dust. It makes too much of a mess. So, well, I could play with it in the kitchen. Or my dad said, how about I put it up in the garage for you? I'm like, what? But I spent hours in the garage playing teacher with my chalkboard, literally emulating my teacher of the time, with my classroom behind me, and I would be there at the chalkboard. And I also, I loved all the usual things probably that girls do. I was quite a girly girl, I think, colouring in. And I remember face paints as well. I absolutely adored face paints, which doesn't really say anything about who I am now. I wear the bare minimum of makeup, but I think there's a creativity there, which I absolutely love. But teaching, yeah, love to be the teacher. How about you, Becki, when you were 6? Can you take yourself back?
Yeah, as you were talking, I was just sort of thinking, what did I do when I was 6? And I think I lived in a real world of creativity. I was always playing some kind of make-believe. I loved my Barbies. In fact, I played with Barbies for many years, beyond 6. I loved dressing up. My mum and dad had a suitcase in their bedroom of just old clothes, and I would constantly dress up. I used to have a really long skirt that I would put on my head and pretend that that was a wig. You might have noticed from the image, our image for Meet Me on the M53. I have short hair. My hair has never been overly long except for when I've had extensions. So yes, I used to fantasize that I had this really long hair. I'd put scrunchies in this skirt and that would be my hair. But I spent a lot of time writing as well. I used to love writing stories. Now, whether I did that quite at 6 or maybe that was a year or two later, I'm not entirely sure. But when I was young, I would spend hours writing stories. My mum was a stay-at-home mum, and she took me to the local library, really regularly. And I used to love going to the library. I would spend so long in the library looking through the books. And then I remember that I was determined I was going to be the youngest author. And then I found a book from a girl who I think had published her first book I think she was about 8. And I'd missed the boat. And I remember being really upset about that I wasn't going to be the youngest author. I spent a lot of time writing and being generally quite creative. And I think I've lost an element of that as an adult. In my early 20s, I used to make a lot of jewellery. I used to love doing that. And then I've not done anything like that for years. And I have actually been trying to think about how do I bring more creativity into my business. And I do try to do sort of lots of fun things then when it comes to the workshops that I run. I try and bring in lots of fun. And so I feel like I'm sort of just starting to open that door to creativity again and reclaim that as one of my strengths.
Yeah.
And really use it.
Yeah, I love that, Becki, because that's something that really resonates with me. It's something that I've started to do as well, because I was a very creative child, and I was telling myself that I'm not creative, and I was telling myself that because I was not wanting to probably put the time and effort into writing my social media posts and stuff like that, and so it was easier to tell myself that I'm not creative, I don't know what to write. But I was, and I am still creative. And actually, if you turn that around and say, well, if I were creative, what would I do? Yeah. And just see what comes up for you. Just as I've said before, the power of reflection. Just ask yourself that question. If I were creative, what would I do? How would I write differently? Because I found that I was writing in real corporate speak, and I still do that a bit. I think that's quite ingrained into me, but I'm really trying to add a little bit more of me into the way that I write and perhaps what I write. But yeah, it's interesting. And I would put that question out to you as a listener. You're listening now. What did you love to do when you were 6? And you might think, well, actually, you and Becki sound like typical girls. You're just doing the things that girls do. Yeah, maybe. But my sister wasn't I have an older sister. She wasn't with me teaching on the blackboard. She never, I don't ever remember her touching the chalk. But she was out riding a bike, she was climbing a tree, she was doing other stuff. We both played with our dolls. We had dolls that were supposed to be babies, and we had prams, and I had Cindy. I didn't have Barbie, I had Cindy. So my sister Cindy had a horse, and she'd go off show jumping. My Cindy had a car, so my Cindy was a rally driver. I don't think the car was a rally car, but it was in my world. So my Cindy was a rally driver. So yeah, we did all that usual stuff, but it's about looking into it. It's about what does that mean? Where's the creativity in that? And kids are creative. Kids have lovely imaginations. So it's really nice just to think back. But the reason, have a look at what you used to do and where your superpowers come from. Are they coming from your childhood, or are they coming from learning that you've done in later life? And I bet it will be a mixture of both. But we dumb ourselves down to appease our saboteur mind, which we've all got, and to appease others who tell us that we can't, because that's what they truly believe. And because when we work with our strengths, I've said things happen easily and they happen in flow. So we often think that if it's easy, it can't be real. I'm not working hard enough if it comes easy to me. So we push it away. But actually, if things feel easy to you, it might be that you're doing a brilliant job.
Yeah. And I wonder what would happen if you said to yourself, okay, if I accept that I am good at whatever it is, listening to people, I'm good at planning, I'm good at project management, I'm good at whatever. If I accept that I am good at this, what would be different for me? How would you turn up differently? What would you be doing differently? What impact would it had if you just allowed yourself to accept that it was something that you were good at? It is one of your strengths. It is one of your superpowers.
I think that's a great question to leave it on. Thanks, Becki.
Thank you. No, thank you.
Thank you for listening to Meet Me on the M53. If you'd like to know more, you can see Becki at questforest.co.uk and Fay at fayblakey.com.
Don't forget to subscribe so that you don't miss an episode, and thank you to Wahoo Media for our production. We'll see you next time on the M53.
Safe travels.